I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to remind folks that we do have a mask mandate in our buildings, and we have masks available on the table if you need one. So if you'd like to stay at the meeting, you'll need to have a mask on, and thank you for those of you that do. So if you all would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So before we get into too much of our business, I'd just like to welcome our new board member, Jade Parker from Manchester. Thank you, Jade, for joining us. Welcome. I also would like to remind folks that if you would like to speak, if citizens would like to speak, there's a sign-up sheet on the back table over here. Please make sure your name is on the sign-up sheet if you wish to speak. So we're going to start tonight with our student representatives. Thank you guys for coming and being here in person. It's so nice to see your faces here in person. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask Dr. Conway to introduce his representatives. I was going to do that. Thank you and welcome Cassidy and Rocco. And Dr. Levesque, if you would like to introduce the middle school reps.
We have who's an 8th grader on Lease Island, and Joe Chor, who is an 8th grader on Royal, who will be representing the middle school.
Thank you and welcome Joseph and Celia. Thank you very much for taking your time to come and talk to us about your schools. So we'll start with the high school tonight. We have new mics tonight, so we're all learning how to use them.
Okay, hello, I'm Cassidy, and we have some Senate announcements. The Outreach Committee is planning 2 different events. First is the Penny War. The Penny War will help fundraise for Student Senate and be a fun game for the students with rewards. They're also planning Make a Difference Week to be at the end of the month. The Sustainability Committee is working on getting the senior beach created. They are collecting picnic tables, chairs, etc. to make a comfortable area for students. And of course, they're still working on recycling. The Health Center for National Suicide Prevention Month made yellow ribbons and handed them out at lunch. Recently, they put up cloud-shaped paper on the school bulletin board of things that people were looking forward to, and their new project is health surveys.
The School Spirit Committee is planning homecoming in the homecoming assembly. The homecoming dance is the night of October 16th, and the themes for the week before are Manor Day, Formal Day, Sport Day, and Black and Gold Day. For sports, the fall sports teams are having a great season. Both soccer teams have been playing well. The golf team is on their way to states this Saturday, and field hockey had a game against MCI today, and there's a football game Saturday at Trape Academy. For student council, council's been meeting once a week at 7:10 before school to vote on Senate decisions and discuss upcoming events in their committee.
Do any board members have questions for the high school reps? Great. Thank you, Cassidy and Rocco. Next, we have our middle school reps. Is it turned on?
They're doing some survival kits and some things outside as well. And they're also doing a class in economics. They've been discussing history of money, goods, services, and natural resources. And the demand in stock and market. On the Moose Island team, they are doing rights and responsibilities of a citizen, U.S. government, and we are learning about taxes and yeah.
Hello, I am Joe on the Royal River team in 8th grade. On Royal, we've been talking about most survival. In one class, we're talking about government, economics, and war. In one, we're talking about gravity, space, and other life forms there. We're talking about evolution and genes in one, and in the other, we're talking about survival stories and writing them. For Acadia, they've had their first field trip since before COVID started. All of the students learned how to use steer and boat and canoes. They also learned about common resources and how are we responsible for protecting them.
On the Sebago team, they're focusing on doing hands-on activities and projects. They're doing fun drawings and working together to make cool things and doing math tricks and yeah.
For school-wide, mostly been reminding students to follow the regulations for masks and the dress code. That's it.
Thank you, Celia and Joe. Are there any questions from the board for the middle school reps? Thank you all very much for coming tonight and for all the work putting that information together. We really appreciate it. And you're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like. But if you'd rather go home and do something a little bit more exciting, you're more than welcome to do that as well. Again, thank you for coming. Okay, are there any citizen comments about any of the topics that are not on the agenda? Is the hearing none? Are there any adjustments or additions to the agenda by any board members? Kelty?
Step back. I was hoping we could talk about pool testing, but I don't see it specifically outlined.
That comes under the health and safety procedures and protocols.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, moving right along. I believe that Dr. Conway has something he would like us to hear about so we can celebrate. There's so many good things happening in our district. I'm always excited to hear about the celebrations that are going on. So thanks for sharing those with us.
I think this is on. All right. Yeah, thank you for having me up. I'm fortunate in that I get to have Sarah Munez and Miss Barley are going to talk to you for a few moments about Hispanic Heritage Month, which is September 15th to October 15th, I believe. So come on up.
Well, buenas noches. I am Miss Barley. I'm now the Spanish teacher at the high school. And my guest tonight is Sarah Muniz. She was my 8th grade student last year, and now she's in Spanish 2 this year at the high school. So it's a good celebration because she worked all year, every Wednesday during tutorial time, virtually. And she could go up to Spanish 2 at the high school. So I'm very proud of her work. I would like to recognize that. Okay, Sarah? Yes, so coming to the high school, I talked to Senora Fry, and I didn't know exactly where the students were they learning with the schedule they had last year. And so to start the year, there is this wonderful celebration, the Hispanic Heritage Month. So each year, Americans observe National Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th by contributions of American citizens whose ancestors came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. So the observation started in 1968 as Hispanic Heritage Week under President Lyndon Johnson and was expanded by President Ronald Reagan in 1988 to cover a 30-day period starting on September 15th and ending October 15th. So the day of September 15th is significant because it's the anniversary of independence for Latin American countries, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. In addition, Mexico and Chile celebrate their Independence Days on September 16th and September 18th. Not el 5 de Mayo, it's not Independence Day. That's next year away. Also, Dia de la Raza, Indigenous Peoples Day, which is October 12th, falls with this 30-day period. So what the essential questions I would like my students to answer? How are we learning about heritage and culture in Maine? How do we interact with people that have different heritages and cultures from our own? How do we learn about our own identity? So then we watched a video about the difference between Hispanic, Latino, and Spanish identities because people get really confused with those nominations. It's a 4-minute video. I don't need to show unless somebody who can see it. So every class, they get to know a Hispanic person that lives in Maine. So it's a project from a fellow teacher in Bangor. And she collected probably 55 people from different parts of Latin America that live right here in Maine. Doctors, restaurant owners, scientists, professors, students. It's quite amazing, right, Sarah? We see it every class. We learn about somebody. So then students choose to write about a Hispanic person they admire. Those are my sources for this project, that's all, yeah. It's
We're doing so well.
Thank you. So those are the Hispanics celebrated in class. So Spanish 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Spanish 3, 4, and 5, they wrote all in Spanish because that was the task. So I could see where they are in their writing skills. And they're quite good. So you'll probably recognize some of them: musicians, athletes, singers, painter, Pablo Picasso. Yeah. And then I got a request. Sarah wanted to talk about Carmen Miranda. Coincidentally, she is Portuguese, but was raised in Brazil. And I thought that's fantastic because Carmen Miranda has those fruit on her head and tico tico ka, tico tico la, tico tico la. I said, great. But I remember a project that she did about Puerto Rico. And she had original photos. She interviewed some family members. And I thought, Sarah, remember that project? She said, oh yeah. So what do you think? Let me think. And then she decided to write about my great-grandpa, Alejandro Montalvo Muniz Vargas. And now, if you want to share with me. All right.
Let's
That's
see if I
him
can.
right there. Right?
Yes. Okay. Hola, everyone. Buenos noches. I'm Sarah Muniz, and I'm here to talk to you about the Hispanic Heritage Month project, specifically about my great-grandpa. I'd like to start off by saying this project was quite fun, and I was very excited to learn that I had enough information about my great-grandfather to pick him for it. My great-grandpa, as I usually call him, or my bisabuelo, he's Alejandro Montalvo Muniz El Primero, the first. And he came from Puerto Rico, from San Juan, the capital of Puerto Rico. He had lived on his familial coffee farm with 18 siblings. And I was, okay. I won't think. Okay. My heritage is important to me. And my great-grandpa is one of the biggest parts of my heritage that I know of thus far. And I got to learn more, not just about my heritage with this project, but more than I knew about my great-grandpa. Yeah, the moment I heard we were doing this project, I immediately thought of my great-grandpa, but then I almost chose Carmen Miranda because I didn't think I would have enough information on my great-grandpa to pick him. And when my great-grandpa died, my great-grandma didn't really keep a lot of pictures and such from him. But I learned while doing this project that she never dated or remarried or took her ring off from their wedding after his death either. So, as Sanara Barley said, after talking to her about it, I learned that I did indeed have enough information about him to pick him as my Hispanic person. So when I got home, I immediately told my Grammy and Grampy about it. And I told them that I would be doing a mini interview of sorts with them. So I did the mini interview with my Grampy first, as he's my great Grampy's son. And he knew a lot. Most of the information I got for the project was from Grampy. And at first, I was quite worried that I would go overboard on it and write a lot, more than the one-page expectation, which I've done before. So from my great Grampy, specifically from the information my Grampy was able to gather from him, I've learned that I have Taino ancestry, who are the native peoples from Puerto Rico. And I've also learned that I have Spanish, Portuguese, and some African American ancestry as well. And that's it.
Yes, so as a teacher, how can I connect my subject matter with real life situation? That's the example. If I did not go through this project, we will not have a chance to hear about this wonderful story and Sarah's heritage. So thank you, muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What an interesting story and a great project. Thank you very much for sharing it with us. Okay, so now we're going to move on to reports. Is there anyone from the Staff Association that has anything that they'd like to report? No? Okay. So I'm just going to ask the principals if they have anything they want to add to their very comprehensive reports that they've written. If there's anything that you'd like to add. I'm seeing no. That's fine. Just wondered if there was anything that happened since you wrote your report. So thank you for those detailed reports. It's really important, I think, for us to read those and to know what's going on in your school. So I really appreciate all the time that you put into those. Thank you. And anything from middle school that you'd like to add that wasn't in your report, Dr. Levesque?
No, I think that kids did a good job.
They did a great job. Thank you. And I'm not going to ask you, Dr. Conway, because you've already been up here twice. So I think you've given us plenty of information tonight. So thank you. Unless there's something else. Okay. Health Center Director. Is the Health Center Director here? No. Okay. Ryan, anything you want to add? No. Karen? Is Karen here? Anything you'd like to add? I would like to just say one thing about Karen's report. I really appreciate the perspective of a district plan. I think it's really important for us to really start looking at what we're doing district-wide and to be thinking about our curriculum and the resources that we have and the supports that we can give district-wide was really impressive. So thank you, Karen, for that. And Jay's not here, so he's not going to report anything. Okay, so have any of the committees met yet? I don't think any of the committees have met, right? Am I correct? Right, okay. So we don't have any committee reports yet. So we haven't met. Okay. So now we'll move on to our action items. So the first one is approval of the minutes of September 15th. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept. Motion to accept the minutes from September 15th.
So there's a motion to accept the minutes from September 15th and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's okay to abstain, yeah. Opposed? Anybody opposed? Abstain? So that one passes. The next one is to accept the donations, and we had quite a list of donations in our packet. Do I have a motion? So it's moved and seconded to accept the donations that were listed in our packet, which were a lot of donations to the food pantry, which we really appreciate. So thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor? It passes unanimously. So the next one is the awarding of the snowplow sanding contract for 21-22.
I move that we accept the snowplow and sand bids for the 2021-22 school year as recommended by the superintendent.
So it's been moved and seconded that we recommend that we approve the recommendations of the superintendent for the snow plowing and sanding contracts for the year 21-22. Is there any discussion? Tyler? Say that again. I'm going to ask somebody that can answer that question because I can't. Sean?
As of right now, I'm in talks with Lions Construction. They're the ones that used to do it. I have finally got two to them and they're going to let me know by the end of the week. It's not looking the greatest with him, but he knows that we're in dire need of somebody to plow. If it doesn't go through, then we'll just look, elsewhere or whatever. So if anybody knows anybody in Manchester that might want to plow, please give them my name and my number.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Betty, did you vote? Is it right? Okay, I didn't see you here. Before I turn my head. So that passes unanimously. The next one is awarding of the Bustley lease purchase agreements. Do we have a motion?
I second.
So it's been moved and seconded to accept the, bus lease purchase agreements as recommended. Any discussion? No? All those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is to review our health and safety procedures and protocols. So the way that we're going to do this is Ryan Reserve is going to go over where we're at right now. Then the board will discuss, and then we will take citizen comments, and then we will vote. So that'll be the procedure. So, yeah.
Easier to just do that. So Dave asked me, or Superintendent Charette has asked me to go over just some general information you'll see in your packet. In 7E, he has about 7 various points from statewide information to down to our school information. But some of the highlights that he wanted me to touch upon were some main points that the board talked about the last time that this was reviewed, which is that the state and county.
Sorry, your mic's not working.
We could hear it.
It's not coming through the Zoom. It's ours.
Is that better? Yeah, okay. Sounded like I was mic'd up, but I guess I wasn't. Back to my original point. So Superintendent Charette, just in case people on Zoom didn't hear it, there are some about 7 major points that he went through in 7E for the information that was provided. But some of the main things that he wanted me to touch upon that were discussed at the last board meeting when this came up were the state and county designations. And right now those still all remain high. Actually, the state across the board is still in red or in the high category. And we are still working to set up pool testing. The nurses have been working really hard to get that all in place. There's a lot of logistics that go into that. And as many of you know, within the community and the board too, the consents or opt-ins have gone out, and we've received information back from various schools. And this information may be familiar to some of you, but it looks like as of today, and I got some updated numbers, Manchester has about a 25% staff return, and these are the ones that have consented in. 25% for students. Reedfield's about 9%. Wayne is 32%. Mount Vernon is 12%. Middle school 12.5%. High school is 3%. And that may not be the most current as of the minute today, but this was as of just a couple days ago before Superintendent Charette gave me this. So, and obviously, as you talked about before, there's no magic number, but there is consensus that you would want to make sure that you have appropriate pool sizes when you're looking to implement pool testing. And you want to make sure that you have enough participants in that pool size so that your results can be valid. And I think the nurses, again, are working really hard to do that. They're still looking to hire a COVID nurse. And then they're also looking at how that would impact them as well. So there's a lot of stuff that the company itself that we'd be contracting with would do in advance of setting those up. And then there's also things that would take a lot of manpower and time from the nurses if there was a positive pool. So all those things I think are going into consideration of what Superintendent Charette's recommendation is that based on all that information on those various data points, in particular the county and state color system and being on red and high, and then still working to set up pool testing that is a couple weeks away. And then the current opt-in or consent numbers, which are lower, I think, than we would hope at this point. He's recommending that the current safety protocols continue as is for the next month and be reviewed again at the November Board of Directors meeting.
So do we have a motion based on that recommendation?
I move that the RSU 38 health and safety protocols remain unchanged and be reviewed again at the first November meeting.
So it's been moved and seconded that the protocols that we currently have stay in place. Is there any board discussion? Kelty?
So to keep things the same, that includes keeping on track with the pool testing moving forward, keep that moving forward. That's part of this, right?
Oh, the mic, sorry.
Yes, that's his recommendation at this time. I think the nurses as well, they want to make sure that it's set up properly, that all steps are in place so that it can actually be executed as it's expected to be. And then also, again, I think the big thing to look at in the numbers that they're considering are just the opt-in or the consent rate. So that's obviously, that's a concern given how low those are at this point.
Okay, so this I guess is where I want to open it up to discussion. So once upon a time, I got really excited about pool testing, really excited, but I guess I didn't know enough about it. It seemed like a really great workaround for like a solution to a problem. But in having a lot of conversation with people in the community, administrators, school nurses, you name it, it seems like the more I learn about it, the more troublesome it becomes. And I think it's going to put an ungodly amount of strain on some of these professionals that we really need
help with. I'm concerned about resignations, and I mean, I laugh, it's not a laughing matter, but that's how serious the concerns have come up to be. So in trying to support our amazing staff in this direction, how do I want to word it? I guess, keeping things the way they are, but removing pool testing. And I know that they've done so much work to get this ball rolling and to get us to where we're at. But I think based on what it costs and what it entails, it's just a huge use of resources and manpower that we don't have. And I don't really want to put it on the nurses any more than they already have on their plate.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Rebecca?
Do you think it's too late to reallocate the ESSER funds that have already been for this?
That has gone in already. Yeah.
I
Yep.
thought so.
Patty, did you want to say something?
I was just about ESSER funds as a nurse who would be if there isn't buy-in and it doesn't proceed, like what do we do about it?
I'm going to ask Bridget if she can address that question. Thank you, Bridget.
We will have opportunities because this grant goes through 2024. And so we will have opportunities to reallocate those funds later on. I mean, the original grant has gone through. It has not been approved yet, but it has been submitted. And it's not something that we need to jump on and change right now. I mean, we have 3 years almost to spend this money. So it's nothing that we need to jump on right now. But yes, we will have opportunities to reallocate if we use it differently, if we want to use it differently.
Great. Thank you, Bridget. David?
I think it might be just as well if we still have that student with the volume and then the testing just like that. Because with our stress that is already on our healthcare professionals, it wouldn't hurt, especially when we will be able to reallocate it in the future to have that. Was trying to go ahead with seeing if we can set it up. Because that's what we committed to. And it's so to me, the second best option we have to keep the kids in school. To me, it doesn't go stretch like the math school, but it does help us respond more effectively if there's not. If I understand it. So you all know the hit, right? So, trying to set up the function because that is
Jade?
So I would have to, I don't know if you guys can hear me okay. I would have to agree. I think that it does put an undue burden on our nursing staff, especially when we don't have a COVID RN and there's not a lot of interest in the position, so to speak. As of right now, there's only been one applicant to even apply for that position. And so when you put all of this testing, all of this tracing, our nurses are already working very late into the evening, as I believe many of you guys know, as you've gotten the emails, et cetera. So I think the concern is it's going to add more stress, and there's going to be a breaking point, right? In every profession, there's a breaking point. And I think for our nursing staff, it will be their breaking point of, you know what, I'm done. So then now we're looking for 2 replacements, you know, a COVID nurse and nurses within our schools as well that we don't want to lose. So I think that's a big concern. And I think when you add in pool testing, what are we actually gaining from it? I don't know if you look into the research, you know, there's so many false negatives, there's so many false positives, and then to do the tracing from that. And if a parent opts into pool testing, it's every week that your child's being tested. I don't know about many of you guys, but if you have been tested every week, it kind of gets old. And as a kid, especially in elementary school, I'm sure it's a little bit scary, right? And for me, if you're not going to gain any knowledge from it, and the recommendation would still be mandatory masking, why would we implement this and still, you know, I don't know. I think it's just it's an added task that we're not going to gain a lot of information from. Most schools that are doing pool testing at this point are also doing mandatory masks, and they're chasing down a lot of false positives, false negatives that, you know, later on turn out, oh, guess what? That was actually a positive test. And 2 days later, that student becomes symptomatic. So then you're dealing with all of these variables that right now we don't have, all of these different variables that we're chasing down that we shouldn't have to chase down, that if we do mandatory masking, it alleviates a lot of that pressure from the staff, and it keeps the kids still safe and moving forward in school. And that's the most important part. And I think really keeping our nurses is huge, especially right now. And working on getting that COVID nurse, I think, is still important. I don't think that we should not get that COVID nurse, because there's still kids that have to be contact traced, especially as numbers go up. Maybe next year we're looking at a different scenario and those numbers decline, and then we can look at maybe reallocating at that point. But right now, I think that having a COVID nurse to back up our nursing staff that's already burnt out and at almost their breaking point is extremely important.
Thank you. Anyone else? Kelsey?
I just want to say thank you very much. Well spoken, and I co-sign on that as well. And I think that, you know, it looks great on paper, and so much stuff does in this world, but there are so many variables. And, you know, the more and more cases that go up, the more natural immunities are in these young kids. They could test positive 1 month, they're going to test positive for months to come, and they're going to trigger those traces and the pool testing. There's just so much more to it in reality than I think there is on paper. And I have heard huge pushback from the people that are going to have to implement this. But David, you are amazing for wanting the extra stop checkpoints. I mean, that's great to want that. And I think that this has been one of the ways to do it. It's one of the things they've provided in this world for us. And to want those things is a good thing. But I think on paper, it just looks better instead of in the real world. But holding on to that money maybe for this, should it be needed, is a great holding money. Maybe we do get it, maybe we don't. I mean, it all comes down to right applications and interest. And like, yeah, allocate it later down the road. But yeah, worried about the pressure on these poor nurses. There's a lot going on, and it's not over yet. But so I don't know the actual protocol to move to eliminate pool testing.
I'm going to hear from David, then I'll get back to your question, okay?
I just had a question. I believe the original motion that started pool testing was because if we do the pool testing, we still have the protection from not having to send kids home without having a mask mandate. And so that was why I think the pool testing passed, which is not to disagree with what was said or to say that.
Right. There was another layer to keep kids in school if we weren't going to do the mandatory masking. But like you said, there's not enough buy-in.
Go ahead.
Is anybody else as surprised as I am by how these rules are written by the, powers that be above all of us and trying to just understand it? And my heart goes out to anybody who's had to hear from frustrated parents. But so the rules just seem wild. And it's like, here we are thinking just masks or just, with pool testing, and it would just keep everybody in school all the time. But it doesn't seem to be that way. And there's plenty of quarantine still happening. So I don't know how much of a dent pool testing would put on that, but I can't keep up with these rules. It's a lot.
So to answer your other question, there'd have to be an amendment to the original motion to, the motion was to continue with the procedures as they are now. Somebody would have to amend that to eliminate the pool testing.
I would be happy to amend my motion, but I'd like to hear from parents first.
The only comment that I would say if we're talking is I would just say, unless we know, I think that's a great idea if we don't get a COVID nurse, but perhaps we could wait and find out. I think because that's a game changer for me. If we don't get COVID nurse, and I absolutely think we have to get rid of testing, we don't have any capability. If we get a COVID nurse and we still eliminate testing, I'm also fine with that, because I think our nurses can be great. But I think maybe amending our original before we even know whether or not we have a nurse is.
Okay, am I good? The light went out, so I don't know if, okay, perfect, okay. So I get we have low numbers, but I just want to be, if you participate in pool testing, I don't know if it's hard to understand to follow all this stuff. So you don't have to quarantine if you don't have symptoms. And it's all about keeping children in school. I mean, I've heard from, my own daughter's in quarantine for the second time with 0 symptoms, the second time. And so if people, I don't think people quite understand, it's called community quarantine. She can come to school but do nothing else. Now she's in full quarantine from a contact last Friday, and she was in school till today. And there's other parents who called me who are on our team, same situation. So I think if people understand that, I don't think I'm not blaming anybody. I know people are at the breaking point. The school nurse is wonderful. She was very apologetic, and my wife told her stop. I mean, we've known Angela for a long time, and it's not their fault that the rules are coming down from the DOD. I want to make that clear to people. It's not the people here. These rules are coming from the DOE and the CDC. I've had many conversations with them, and saying your kid can come to school, be in lunch, be in band, but can't be out on the field hockey team with 0 symptoms and has to be away for 10 days. It doesn't make sense, and people can't answer your questions. The kids are at a breaking point too. I've seen many kids have breakdowns. High school kid, I didn't know. I know they can get vaccinated, but that's not my conversation. There's kids who, again, I talked to a parent on the way here. Their kid's been out of school for the second time for 10 days, and they can't be vaccinated because they're too young. So I get people, everybody is at a breaking point. I appreciate the work everybody does. And people got to remember when you get calls, they're not making the rules. The rules are coming from higher powers. So I think we need to give the pool testing a chance because it's about keeping children in school. And I agree with the fact that if we can't get a COVID nurse, then I probably would change my mind. But I think we need to wait.
Jade?
I have a question and I don't know if anybody here can answer this for me because I don't know the answer to this, but looking at the DOE's website and their recommendation for school-based pool testing, they're using a PCR test as their original test. And a PCR, I don't know if anybody else realizes this, but it's different than a Binax test. And a PCR is actually going nasopharyngeal, which is a lot more invasive than what everybody does as a Binax test at Walgreens. So when you go into Walgreens and you just go up like this far into your nose, the nasopharyngeal is all the way to the back. You're gagging. It's not comfortable. And so I'm concerned about that wording and the fact that it says PCR testing. So are we PCR testing these kids? And because to me, that's a pretty invasive situation. And that's how pool testing works looking at that.
The PCR test we run in Islam. I feel nasopharyngeal, but I believe the way it is pool testing is just a nasal swab. So PCR is the way the mechanism of the test is run, not the swab.
Okay, is that like confirmed through DOE that that's acceptable? Because a lot of those Binax tests aren't sent off for PCR because it's not as accurate.
Correct. It's a different, completely different mechanism. And that's the Binax and the PCR test. The test for the antigen, not the viral.
Okay, so which one are they actually doing? Because if you only go this far, it's like you said, not as accurate. So is that what they're doing for kids for PCRs? Is they're only going up this high, which isn't an accurate PCR test?
It's the same mechanism for an antigen test or PCR test in the swab. It's the way the test is run.
So I think at this point, we could probably get the answer to that. And I appreciate your helping, but I think we should find out a definite answer about that from our school nurses to see what they're saying about that. So we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Betty?
Between now and November, when we meet again to discuss this, are they going to get the pool testing up and running? Do we know that?
That's the plan, but we have to have the opt-in numbers in order to do that, and which we don't have right now.
So they wouldn't, if we don't get the numbers, they won't start it.
So my understanding in the setup, and there's a setup chart that has about 20 steps in order for the schools to be ready for pool testing. One of those does talk about the staff capacity to do that, and the others talk about the number of opt-ins, and then also just getting your procedures and your protocols in place. So from my understanding, from what Superintendent Charette had talked about, is that they're still a couple weeks out in getting not just the materials and information from the company and the startup documents, but then also getting internal protocols and practices in place to be able to make that happen. So, and I know that the COVID nurse is one of the things that they want to make sure that can be there to support it. I think more so on the back end of it. So I think the front end of it in terms of the pools and the weekly tests is a different, it's a different animal than if there's an actual positive pool, the strain that would put on that's my understanding of the strain that would put on the internal staff of the nurses within the district, because there's a lot more follow-up and chase down of that after the fact.
Yeah. Can you use Sean?
Well liked today by these doodaddies. Does this one work? All right. I don't even know if I remember what I was going to say anymore. No, since our percentages are low, could that also be, I mean, Sean's referred to
parents and understanding, could it be because there is a lack of education by the parents having an understanding, and is it possible to get education for parents about if you enroll, like kind of the questions that were being asked, how far up does the swab have to go in your nose? And how does it work? And if you're not part of the pool test, then your kid can still get quarantined. But if you are part of the pool test, you won't. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the rules. I'm just, if there is education out there.
I'm not sure that there has been. I don't know one way or the other, but I think it's a really good idea. I think it is important because people are very confused about what this all means. What does it mean for quarantine? Because it still seems like a lot of kids are getting quarantined.
Maybe no one knows the answers. I don't
And-
know. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think it would
Since
be
we're in the
worth
business of education, maybe we
I
need to
think
get
it'd be worth
educated about it.
looking into and just maybe getting something out there to parents about the, what it's all about, what it means if you do, if you don't, and how they actually do it. And maybe our numbers will go up. I don't know.
Could we possibly have, if the education exists, I don't know if it does. If education exists, could we possibly have that at our first November meeting so that if the public potentially comes and or there is education, we could all watch it as a board and whoever else wants to zoom in or whatever?
We can do that. Ryan's writing this down so that we can remember.
There is a lot of education online as well. A lot. I don't think so. It's a lot of documents.
Right. I mean, I agree with Sean on this, that if we can minimize the number of students in quarantine, that's the goal. That's why I think we need to keep the pool testing in place. But I think if we present it in a way that's like, you have three options to keep the kids in school. You can pool test, you can get vaccinated for the ones that are eligible, or you can wear the mask. And I think leaving everything that we have in place now for the next month and just see what cases go, I think is the best. I don't think scrapping the whole pool testing when we're this far into it makes any sense, especially where we've already started spending money on it.
And just to add to this, I was looking back through the documents I was trying to get up to speed for tonight at the same time. The documents that the company did share, and I think I've been able to confirm that the PC, the test is done the same way as the rapid, the pool testing test. So it's not one that goes as deep as the PCR test. That would, the positive pool would dictate the next steps in terms of what the next type of test would be. But the one that would be involved in the pool testing would not go as far. That was your, hopefully I didn't use the right terms that you did, but hopefully.
Kelty?
So can the kids that have had it and got over it, can they get a free pass to just stay in school? Are they like, you're in, you've had it, you're good, you
Kids that
ran
have
the
had
gauntlet?
COVID,
Yeah,
90 days.
that's it.
So once, if you're, there was four, I think there was 4 things, had COVID for within 90 days, vaccinated, pool testing, or mandating masks. Those are the 4 that kept kids in.
Okay. Okay. So you have to have that on record then. They just, a positive test to the school nurse, you're good for 90 days, don't have to quarantine no matter what.
I guess based on the head shaking from.
Just as a note, I think what was shared with us says that if you look on this under the blue, that says number of vaccinated students who are close contacts but got to stay in school. And it gives the numbers of 15, 14, 29, 28, 30. So this is students that didn't have to leave school. And then similar thing for the staff. So it could be equal or better with the testing, but either way, we are keeping some of the people in school that otherwise would have had to go home and stay away.
I just want to read something real quick. It's from the main.gov. It's pooled PCR testing protocol. It's basically a flow chart. So samples collected from students and staff once per week. Pool samples delivered to the lab for processing via overnight FedEx or another carrier. Pool test result is positive. All members tested individually using the Abbott Bionex rapid antigen. If the tests do not identify positive individuals from the pool, repeat the test within 2 days, which is sooner. If no positive individuals are identified, then proceed to the next scheduled pooled. If it was pool testing is positive, all members are tested. If it does identify the positive individual from the pool, close contacts in pool testing, positive cases is isolated, remaining negative pool members and close contacts in testing program resume in-person learning. If its pool test is negative, all pool members continue learning without any interruption. Just for
So
clarification.
I think that information will be really important to get out to parents, just so that, in maybe even a more simple way. I mean, it's still complicated. You know, there is a lot of information online, but it's pretty complicated to wade through it all. So I think it would be helpful for us to get some information out to them. So is there any more board discussion? Because I'd like to call on citizens that have signed up to speak if there's no more board discussion at this
I
point.
just would like to say one last thing.
Sure.
The minimum number of individuals you need in a pool test is 5. Max is 25. Just to throw that out there.
Thank you.
No. I just hate that we're sending well kids out of school. On the record, well kids should be in school. We should send sick kids home. And I know we're going through a lot of hoops, guys, and it's hard to understand, but I appreciate sharing of information and the meeting of the minds here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the kids that are not showing any symptoms and they're well and if they test negative, they should be in school. So it's about the DOE and the CDC regulations, and that's where we really need to put our energies into asking them to revisit those. Okay, Jessica Silsby.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jessica. My son attends Reedfield Elementary. But I also want to give a little background about myself. I'm not only a mom, but I'm also an ER nurse. I work at Maine Medical Center. I've been an ER nurse for 11 years and at Maine Med for the last 6. I'm also a nurse educator for the emergency department and the nurse residency coordinator. And I support the continued masking, mandatory masking. Our hospitals are overwhelmed. Our pediatric hospital, Barbara Bush, the only certified pediatric hospital in the state, is overwhelmed. We are constantly holding kids in the ER because our pediatric ICU and pediatric hospital and inpatient units are full with sick kids. With COVID, with RSV, we are overwhelmed. So please, please keep kids masked, as well as and I think pool testing is a good thing. I understand it's a lot of resources and things, but it's just one more thing to help keep our kids in school, like you said. So if we can find a COVID nurse, then I think it's important to keep going forward and maybe readdress it at the November meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amanda Philbrook.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Philbrook. I'm a resident of Manchester. And I came today to suggest a couple of suggestions of different things. As far as pool testing goes, I don't even see that's an issue to even spend more than a few minutes talking about. First of all, you don't have the participation to do it, 1. And 2, it's a parent's option. If a parent wants to do that to their child, that's absolutely fine. We need to go back to parents actually having choices about their children. And pool testing has not had anyone fired up because we have a choice. We can say, no, we don't want that happening to our children. As far as the masks go, I'd like to suggest maybe revisiting when the children are wearing masks. I believe that it should be safe enough that if a child is sitting at their desk, just like a restaurant, that they should be able to sit and take their mask off. I don't see that they should be sitting doing testing all day long with their face covered. I think that that child should have that choice of taking that mask off if they're sitting. If they're out in the hallways, whatever, but I think that we need to go back to having some choices. As it is, my kids are picked up at 6:50 in the morning, and they are dropped off by the bus after 3:30, closer. At the first week and a half of school, it was 4 o'clock by the time my children were getting off. I was very concerned. Never got a call from any of the schools saying, hey, you know, there's been a delay or anything. The school schedule says 3:35 they should be dropped off. First day was 4:01. After I called Manchester and asked to check in with the bus because I didn't know where my children were, no communication whatsoever. And then the secretary couldn't get hold of any of the buses because it was poor coverage, poor reception. So just putting that out there. They have gotten much better over the last, month that we've been in school. It has increased to about 340-ish, still about 9 hours. I'd also like to propose having a poll of the community. Poll the community. We have surveys for everything. To put out a survey with parents about the mask choice, I think that you'd get a better response or a more accurate response. I know some people that won't come to advocate for their children. They just don't want to be here and in this environment. I think to be able to poll the teachers and the children and the parents, I think that's huge. And it would really see where we stand. I'd also like to ask about the money that's coming into the school because it is right now mandatory masking. What does that look like per child? What kind of funds are we getting to be mandatory mask? I think that there's a huge misconception when it comes to what you guys have control over and what you don't. I realize the CDC somehow, is driving all of these rules, but there are very local schools, not more than 15 minutes away that are private schools that don't wear masks. They haven't had any issues. There have been no outbreaks. I have close friends that have children that go to school every day. And because they have to do something as a protocol, as the children walk into the school, they take their temperature. Each child has their temperature read and they are well to go on. They can't have visitors in the school. The parents can't go in at this time because of that. But that's it. The kids play all day long, not masked. So just some things to think about. Again, I think that there's a lot of deception and I think that there's not a lot of education. And I think that there needs to be some transparency here. So thank you.
Thank you. Laurel Parker?
Hi, I'm Laurel Parker. I'm from Manchester. I work in the emergency department here in our community at Maine General. I'm a physician on the front lines and I see COVID on a daily basis. It is scary. I have never seen a complication of someone wearing a mask. I have seen lots of complications from COVID. This pandemic is far from over. Vaccines are here and they're so close for our kids. We're so close. Our hope is by the end of the month, the FDA has their hearing scheduled and we hope maybe in 2 months we'll be in a very different place for our kids. It's been shown over and over masks work. We've had some exposures in our communities, but there haven't been large outbreaks in the school. I just think that we need to continue for just a bit longer. This pandemic's not over, but we can continue to persevere. Our kids are resilient. My kids come home and I have to remind them to take their masks off. They put it on before they walk out the door and they have never had a problem. We make them fun. I have great patterns for my kids. They have no problems with that. Pool testing, I think it is extremely onerous on our nurses. I know several of them very well. They, as Jade mentioned, they're at the tipping point. Our whole health system is at its tipping point. I think most of our community is, but our health system is on a precipice. The burnout that we see right now is hard. It's hard to be taking care of COVID patients and all other sick patients and seeing people in the community not thinking it's real. It's defeating. And we need to support our nurses in any way we can. Thank you for sending that message out to parents to say, hey, it's not the nurse's fault that they have to call you. They don't like doing it any more than you like getting that news. But be kind to each other. This is a hard road. It's been a hard road. And if we can just go a little further, I think it will, we're almost there. I can see that light. Our kids are so close to getting vaccinated. Pool testing, I think it's an absolute no-go unless we have a COVID nurse or maybe two. I don't know if it may take more than one. It's funny, I have two kids. I have a kid in second grade. I have a kid in kindergarten. My second grade kid, whatever it takes, Mom. I want to be safe. You want to test me all the time? Fine. My kindergartner, she's a little more nervous. I get it. But our kids are looking at us. I think somebody mentioned that at us, the meeting a month ago. Our kids are watching everything that's going on. We can set the example, but please, the masks have to stay. The transmission rates are awful. Delta is awful. We have to do what we can to keep our kids safe. By keeping our kids safe, we keep the parents safe, we keep the teachers safe, we keep the grandparents safe. I know your jobs are really hard and I hear all the stresses. You see, I saw national, it's awful. People are being awful to each other. So I think the biggest thing, be kind to everybody. Everyone we're all fighting this battle. I get it. But I think we absolutely have to continue with masking at this time. It's the only way to keep our kids safe. And we have to be kind to our nurses because they can't take much more. Thank you.
Thank you. So right now we have a motion on the floor that our health and safety protocols remain unchanged and be reviewed again at the first November board meeting. Are we ready to take a vote on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? So the motion passes, I didn't count, but 10-3, so that we will keep our health and safety protocols in place and we will review them again at our first November meeting. Thank you, Ryan. So the next item on the agenda is an informational item. It's about the fall coaching and co-curricular appointments. So in your packet, you have the list of all the coaches and co-curricular appointments. So if anybody has any questions or anything about that, that's strictly for your information. Everybody's good with that? Okay. The only thing before we adjourn is I did put together the norms that we talked about at 2 meetings ago, I think it was. They're in your packet, in your folder, I mean. So if you want to just take a look at those at your leisure. And if you have anything that you want changed or if you want to add anything, let me know. And we'll talk about this at our next workshop meeting. And the other thing at our next workshop meeting is our board goals. So if you want to start thinking about our board goals and if you want to send some to me, I've got some ideas I'll share with you. So if you want to do that so we can have a little bit of a head start on it by our next meeting, that would be great. So that's all I have. So I would take a motion for adjournment. Any discussion on that one? All those in favor? We are adjourned.